not really sure what to do about this little ball. Does my hair go to the left of it, to the right of it, on top? I don't know. Hi, my name is Adriana, and today I'll be going over the books that were my biggest disappointments and biggest surprises of 2022. So my little disclaimer on surprises and disappointments, these are not necessarily the best and worst books I read this year. Basically just books that weren't what I expected, I guess. So either books that I had low expectations for that blew me away, or books I had high expectations for and just didn't meet those expectations at all. So if that sounds interesting to you, please stick around and consider liking and commenting on this video and subscribing to my channel if you like bookish things. So starting with the disappointments, because I would like to end on the positive. I have 4 in this category, starting with Beginners by Tom Vanderbilt. This might have been a me problem. I tend to not read synopses, whatever. I don't read anything about a book before I just jump into it, and I purely go off of vibes and covers, so this might be a me thing. But when I saw this cover and the subtitle of The Joy and Transformative Power of Lifelong Learning, I assumed this was going to be a book about the neurological and emotional and life benefits of continuing to learn new skills and be open to new activities throughout your life. And instead, what I got was a rich guy bragging about how he has had all of these great opportunities to learn cool things from very expensive coaches. And have the opportunity to take these extravagant vacations to go try new sports. I feel like instead of marketing this as like kind of a self-help book or like a guide to how being comfortable with sucking at things at first and being a beginner, he could have just written a memoir about how awesome his life is, because that's what this was. And I did not enjoy it. Obviously, if we all had oodles and oodles of money, we would all be trying new things all the time. So like, I don't really know who this book was for or like who it was written for, because I was expecting someone being like, yeah, being open to learning new things, super great for you and your brain, and you're gonna suck at them at first, and that's okay. And we're gonna keep trying and we're gonna learn how to be better. But instead what I got was, I wanted to learn to surf, so I hired this ex-Olympian to teach me how to surf in Costa Rica. And I was like, cool, well like, how does a regular old gal in middle America do that? Obviously she doesn't. She doesn't do that. So, I don't know, it just was very out of touch and not great. So not only was this a disappointment, I think it was also just a poorly marketed book. The next book on this list is Eimer. This was truly like a disappointment because I guess I did read a bit of a synopsis for this one because I requested it on NetGalley. It's a sci-fi futuristic retelling of Beowulf, and on that tagline I was like, this sounds dope. This sounds so fun. And what I got out of this book was a bit of a bloated mess, and I wasn't really quite sure what he was actually going for. So I think parts of this book are really, really great and really fantastic, and I think this author could have just done with like 4 more rounds of editing. So I mean, I'll probably keep an eye out for this author like going forward as he continues to improve his craft, but this one was just not it. It was probably 100 pages too long in the middle. The ending part focuses a lot more on like the relationship between brothers, and I thought that was the most interesting part of the book, and unfortunately it's not that well represented. We get a lot of weird action scenes that just feel disjointed and not like they're really moving the plot of the story along. They're just kind of there to be cool and be fun. I was a little disappointed. I expected a little bit more from this book. The next book I have is Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. I had I think probably the same expectations as everybody else who enjoyed the love hypothesis of this book. I really enjoyed the love hypothesis. I thought it was really fun and fresh to see a humanized woman in STEM living her life, falling in love. I mean, obviously parts of it weren't that great, but it was like a debut author and like a fun romance. So I was kind of willing to suspend my disbelief about a lot of things that were going on. But then with the second one, Love on the Brain, I was like, okay, we're gonna level up. We got the first one out of the way. She's an established writer now. So my expectations were higher for this second one than for the first one. And unfortunately, I think this second one, Love on the Brain, was worse. So not only were my expectations set to be better than the first one, this one was worse than the first one. So just the delta between that, not great. And I think part of this also might have been I was like a little burnt out on romance at the time. I had just read, I think, 2 more romances before this. And me personally, I just don't think I can read too many romances in a row. But I think a lot of the internet agrees with me that this one was not great. Which was a bummer. I'm still going to read the new one she has coming out, but hopefully my expectations are correctly set for this third one. And the last books, I'm kind of fitting 2 books into one here for this last disappointment, but that is the second and third installment of the Wayward Pines series by Blake Crouch. And again, I think my expectations were just set way too high. So I read Pines and absolutely adored it. And it ends on such a crazy genre-bending twist that I think it's probably impossible to follow up that kind of book with something that would meet the expectations of the first. And I don't know, maybe Pines would have been better as a standalone. I think personally, you could just read Pines as a standalone, not continue on with these other 2, and be just fine. And like, I'm not saying they were bad. They weren't bad, but they just weren't. Again, it's just like when your first book is so high and has such an incredible, cool twist, like you can't just keep having these earth-shattering twists every book because that's going to get boring. But I think what he ended up doing was kind of anticlimactic, and the ending of the third one was extremely anticlimactic and just didn't live up to the first one, I guess is what I can say about these ones. They weren't bad, but they just definitely don't live up to the legacy that Pines created. Okay, so shake off all the negativity. Let's jump into some surprises, books that I became obsessed with and wasn't expecting. So the first one was Cloud Cuckoo Land. I actually don't have my copy because I've been lending it out to everybody because I think it is such a cool, fun book. And this was one of the books I set for myself as a goal to read this year because it was really big and kind of intimidating, and I needed just a little bit of extra motivation to like jump into it, but I'm so glad I did. I am obsessed with this book, and I have a full book review on it where I go into detail about all of the incredible like writing style, how the pacing changes depending on what timeline we're in, and it's just so cool. I went in expecting it to be good because I had seen so much hype around it in like my local indie bookstores, and usually they have really good taste. So I was expecting it to be good and well written and fun, but this blew my mind and I loved it so much. The next one I have is Know My Name by Chanel Miller, and this one I am surprised. It surprised me, honestly, because my expectations were high. I expected to be obsessed with this book, but even my current level of obsession with this book is exceeding what I thought it was gonna be. I listened to this as an audiobook. Chanel Miller herself does narrate it. It's heartbreaking and heartwarming. Like, this book will break your heart into a million pieces and then like slowly put it back together with like the tenderness and care of your own mother. Like, it's just, oh my gosh, this book is so good. I'm like starting to cry while I'm thinking about it because it's just so good and so well written, and The horrible, horrible trauma that Chanel Miller was forced to go through in such a public way, she's managed to turn into such a beautiful piece of art that I think is so important and everyone needs to read. Adriana, get it together. Okay, jumping into the next one, hopefully I will be a little less emotional. But that is Daughters of Sparta by Claire Haywood. It wasn't that my expectations were set low for this book, but I read it as part of a Trojan War retelling vlog. So I had already read, I think, 1 or 2 Trojan War, Clytemnestra, Helen of Troy stories before this. I was thinking I was gonna be kind of burnt out on Trojan War stories, and I think I was setting myself up for failure with this one. So the fact that I ended up enjoying it so much is really a testament to how good this book is. It is, like I mentioned, a Trojan War retelling from this perspective of Clytemnestra and Helen of Troy, from their youth in Sparta all the way through the Trojan War to afterward. I think it just does such a good job of humanizing these women and showing the environment they were having to deal with, because I think a lot of times in Trojan War retellings, Clytemnestra and Helen of Troy kind of get portrayed as making really weird, irrational decisions and just crazy women, but this author does such a good job of fleshing out the story around them and really showing that there's a world where they were making the most logical decisions available to them. And I think being able to not change like much of the source material, but just flesh it out in a way that makes these women seem like they're doing what's best for them at the time, I think really is a testament to the creativity and the writing skill of the author. I have pre-ordered Claire Haywood's next book, which is a Perseus retelling, and I am so excited for that because I am not the biggest fan of Trojan War retellings, and I love the Perseus and Medusa story, so I am really excited to pick that up soon. And then finally, my last surprise of the year was A History of What Comes Next. I don't have my copy because I gifted my copy to my dad for Christmas because he likes reading my books with all my little annotations in them. So he has my copy. I really had like no real expectations for this book. I picked it up on a bookstore trip that I made my bachelorette party go on with me. I read the back and saw it was like a World War II historical fiction and was like, I don't know, I don't love World War II historical fiction, but it had such a hard focus on like science and kind of alternate history sort of stuff, which did really tickle my fancy. So I was like hemming and hawing and not sure if I was gonna pick it up or not. And then on the front, I saw it had a blurb from my favorite author, James Rollins, saying he loved it. And I was like, well, transitive property, my favorite author loves this book. I should try it out. And I did. And I'm obsessed. And I did read the second book. The second book is out. The third book, I believe, is coming out in 2023, so I am very excited for that. I ended up enjoying this. Again, my expectations were kind of set like medium. Didn't really have high or low expectations. Again, I don't love World War II retellings, but I do love science and history, so I figured somewhere in there we would fall in, but this was definitely a 5-star for me. I was obsessed. I loved the portrayal of a mother-daughter relationship, especially mother-daughter relationships through time. This was a book that made me believe that I can like science fiction. So at some point I do want to read, I think his other series is called like the Themis Files? I don't know, I'll put up the name of the series here. But this does make me want to pick up his other works. I really, really loved these, and I am excited for the third one to come out and get some resolution to what the hell is going on in this story. So those were my biggest disappointments and surprises of 2023. If you have read any of these books and have any comments on them, please leave them down below. And thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next video.